Dynasties don't get sympathy. They get circled on calendars. In 1 month, South Carolina went 7-1, flew coast to coast, planted the flag in LA as the real SC, dropped 58 points in the paint on Duke in Vegas, and then watched Texas snatch a championship and the number 2 ranking in the country off 1 rebound, 1 shot, 1 possession. This episode, we're not just sitting here reading box scores and reciting stat lines. We're unpacking the entire November saga like a documentary in real time. We're talking about the third act of the Dawn Staley era. We're talking about the rise of Joyce Edwards at the face of this next chapter. We're talking about the portal power moves with Taniya, Latson, and Madina Okot that kept the ceiling at championship level. We're talking about the pain and the reality of losing Ashlyn Watkins and Chloe Kitts for the season and how that ripped away our margin for error on the back line. And we're talking about what that Texas game really told us about who we are now and what we still have to fix. So if you're ready to step into the Crucible with your favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies, pull up, get comfortable, lock in. November was the test. The rest of the season is the response. Let's go. So, fam, what's up, the squad? It's Cess, favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies. Welcome back to Cess Talk Sports. Shout out to my loyal fan to keep pulling up. If you're new around here, welcome to the community. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you never miss a drop. Everybody, like, comment, share, hype this video so I know you pulled up. All right, let's talk about the weight of this crown and why November mattered more than the record even shows. South Carolina is not just another top team in women's college basketball. We are the gravitational center of the sport. We are the program other staffs measure themselves against. Every time a recruit is pitched on changing the game, somewhere in that conversation, South Carolina is the shadow in the background. Every time someone talks about NIL value, facilities, development, legacy, Dawn Staley's name lives right at the center of it. We've already seen 2 different eras of dominance at Columbia. The Aaliyah Boston area was built on overwhelming interior presence, suffocating half-court defense, and the ability to turn every missed shot into a personal insult. After Aaliyah, the Camila Cardoso run carried that same trench warfare feeling. You weren't getting clean looks at the rim, and you weren't beating South Carolina to a rebound unless you wanted 40 minutes of bruises for your trouble. Now we're stepping into what I keep calling the third act of the Staley era. This is the act of guards, of tempo, of space, of using the entire floor as a weapon. It's still rooted in physicality, but the way we deploy that physicality has shifted. Instead of everything starting with a post entry on the block, now it starts at the top with ball screens, with spacing, with multiple playmakers touching the rock. November 2025 became the Crucible where that new identity was tested. Over 30 days, we went through an emotional and competitive gauntlet. We handled the local smoke from Clemson because that game always carries baggage beyond the box score. We took a cross-country business trip to LA and shut down the Brandon War with Southern California about who's the real SC. We came back home and did work against Winthrop and Queens to make sure our bench was ready and the rotation was real. Then we took all that to Las Vegas where we showed our offensive ceiling by turning Duke into paint food. And then we took a gut punch from Texas in the championship game decided by rebounding and one cold-blooded shot from Roy Harmon. So November isn't just about saying we went 7-1. November asks a deeper question. It asks if with this new roster architecture, with this new style of offense, with the conference that's just added Texas and stretched out the top tier, we are still the standard everybody else is chasing. And the rest of this episode is us answering that question piece by piece. To really appreciate what we watched in November, we have to respect the architecture that got us here. Dawn Staley didn't just say, let's run it back and hope it still works. She redesigned what this team looks like on both ends of the floor. Let's start with Taniya Latson, because that portal move was not subtle. At Florida State, Taniya was the sun and the moon on that offense. 25-point-per-game monster, high usage, high volume problem for every defense. When the shot clock was bleeding out, the ball found Latson. When they needed a run-stopping bucket or a momentum swing, the ball found Latson. She lived with the ball in her hands and delivered more often than not. When she chose South Carolina, the decision said a lot. It said she wanted something beyond numbers. It said she wanted to compete at the absolute highest level on a team where she would have to blend her greatness with other great guards. It said she trusted that Dawn Staley could help her grow from bucket getter to championship guard. Here in Columbia, instead of everyone orbiting around her, she walks into a backcourt that already has Raven Johnson controlling tempo and orchestrating a point guard whose gift is seeing plays before they exist. She's alongside Tessa Johnson, a shooter whose gravity changes how defenses guard us. She's in a system that values ball movement and shared responsibility over one person taking 25 shots a night. So November turned into this live lab for harmony. The question became whether a former 25-a-night star could thrive in a more democratic offense without losing her edge. The answer, based on that first month, hell yeah. She averaged around 18 points per game, which isn't a drop, it's rebalancing. She scored in transition, attacked gaps in the half court, played off the ball, and showed a willingness to cut and relocate instead of just waiting for an isolation. She contributed as a rebounder and as a defender, and she adjusted to sharing control with Raven while still being the knife that cuts up defenses. Against Duke in Vegas, you saw what happens when Latson and Raven are in sync. Both of them are putting pressure on the paint, collapsing the defense and forcing bigs to choose between helping on the ball or staying attached to our post. That's the guard era in motion. Latson is at the forefront of that shift, and November shows that she's not fighting the change. She's fueling it. Now we have to talk about the void. This season was supposed to be the big, bold, fully unleashed Ashlyn Watkins year. Senior forward, viral dunks, freakish athleticism, and a defensive presence that felt like having a trampoline patrolling the paint. She was our built-in insurance policy whenever a guard got beat or a shot went up in traffic. And beside her was Chloe Kitts. Big grits click Kitts. Chloe, shoot that Kitts. Y'all know what I say. Then we got the news. Ashlyn and Chloe both out for the entire 2025-26 season due to personal reasons. That wasn't just a depth note on a roster graphic. That was a foundational shift. Everything about how we defended, how we rebounded, how we protected the rim had to be reconsidered. Without them, that automatic chase down block, that extra layer of vertical fear for opposing guards is gone. Our guards know they can't gamble the same way. Our wings know they can't always rely on Ashlyn to clean up their mistakes or Chloe to rebound. And our front court suddenly has to cover all of that up with a different kind of player. That's where Madina Okot comes in as one of the smartest portal pivots in the country. Coming from Mississippi State, Madina's not trying to be Ashlyn or Chloe. She's not an above-the-square shot block artist in the same way. She's not a shooter like Chloe. Instead, she's a technician in the paint. She wins with positioning, with timing, with boxing out early and carving out space. Through November, she's averaging around 13 points and nearly 11 rebounds a game. That is the definition of a double-double anchor. Her job is different. Instead of hunting big highlight blocks, she's focused on ending possessions. When the opponent shoots, her goal for that possession to stop right there. That changes how our defense looks. It's less gamble and erase and more stay connected and finish possessions. Our perimeter defenders now understand that their discipline is not optional. It's the front line of the defense. That plus 15 rebounding margin across the month is not a fluke. That's Madina's presence. Combined with our wings and guards crashing responsibly. The only time that formula really broke down was against Texas. That's why that game feels so loud in the narrative. Now we get to the star of the third act, Joyce Edwards. Listen, Joyce is not in a breakout season conversation. She's in the problem for the entire country conversation. At 6'3", she doesn't sit comfortably in any old school positional box. She's strong enough to bang with bigs on the block, but she has the agility and handle to turn face-up touches at the elbow into full-blown scoring actions. She can hit you with a spin, a step through, a pull-up, or a quick drive, and her footwork looks smoother than every week. Through November, she led South Carolina in scoring at about 19.8 points per game. And it wasn't just volume, it was efficient, controlled, and timely. When the offense bogged down, she became the pressure release. When teams tried to guard her one-on-one, she punished them. When they sent doubles, she showed improved passing and found shooters or cutters. Dawn started using her like a hub at the high post. That's a trust signal. The ball swings to Joyce at the elbow, and from there, she could survey the floor. She could turn and go, hit a backdoor cutter, swing to the opposite side, or dribble into a handoff. She turns that spot on the floor into a decision-making station, not just a scoring spot. When she was named SEC Player of the Week in mid-November, that was the rest of the conference simply acknowledging something we already saw. This is a player who's not just filling the gap left by legends. She's building her own. If South Carolina's third act is a movie, Joyce is the lead. Now, to keep a dynasty alive, you can't just stack stars. Now, you have to stack next. That's where A-Got McKeer and Isla McDowell come in. A-Got arrives from Ontario with a reputation as a shooter and a competitor who thrives in big moments. In November, every time she checked in, she played like she belonged there. She averaged around 7 points per game in limited minutes. But what stood out was her confidence. She took shots without hesitation. She used her length to contest in the rebound. She looked like a player who's going to become a major piece as the season in her career unfolds. The story isn't written in big box score headlines yet, but if you watch the film, you see the value. She's active, long, engaged. She comes in, gets deflections, fights for rebounds, runs the floor, takes on tough defensive assignments on the wing. She's putting up around 5 or 6 points a night, but the energy, the positional size, the predictability, and the willingness to do the grimy work all scream rotation mainstay once she fully settles in. Together, that freshman infusion tells you that this is not some last swing of a window. This is a reload. The style of the team is changing, but the standard never changes. Now, before the marquee showdown, South Carolina has some quieter early season work to do, okay? Those first couple of games at the start of November weren't designed to flood social media. They were designed to build the machine. Dawn used those matchups as live labs. We saw stretches where Joyce slid to the 5 and we went small, stretching the floor, forcing slower front courts to defend in space. We saw stretches where Madina and Joyce shared the floor and created a punishing high-low presence. We saw bench units tested with real responsibility, not just garbage time cameos. In those games, Raven quietly reestablished full command of the offense. Her assist numbers climbed as she used this early stretch to build chemistry with Latson, Cess, Joyce, Madina in different combinations. By the end of the month, she's sitting at nearly 7 assists a night and the roots that are planted in those early blowouts. Those games also set the tone for our offensive identity. We were hovering around 90 points per game across November, and that's not happening by accident. That's a team leaning into pace, leaning into sharing the ball, and proving they can create efficient looks early and often. Then we step into the Clemson game. Now, I don't care how big the talent gap is supposed to be. Rivalry games are different. There's history in the building. There's pride in the building. Alumni phone calls and text messages, receipts from past seasons floating around, okay? For 3 quarters, Clemson did exactly what an overmatched but locked-in rival was supposed to do. They dragged the game into the mud, played a packed-in defense that clogged the paint, and dared us to beat them from the outside. They worked to limit our transition opportunity, tried to force us into long half-court possessions, and basically said, if we go down, it's going to be ugly, not fast. The margin was there, but the rhythm wasn't. You could feel the frustration at times. Shots rimmed out, spacing felt a little tight, and Clemson did just enough to make people in the arena shift in their seats. Then the fourth quarter happened, and South Carolina reminded everybody what it looks like when a champion decides it's time to stop playing around. Dawn turned on the full-court press. Suddenly, the floor shrunk for Clemson. Latson's speed started swallowing up dribbles. Joyce's length started swallowing up passing lanes. Guards that had been comfortable bringing the ball up now looked like they were walking through a haunted house. Clemson managed just 2 points in the entire fourth quarter. 2. Offensively, Joyce stayed steady and finished with 18. Tess added 13 and made timely shots that stretched Clemson's defense just enough. Defensively, that final frame became a statement. When South Carolina flips to that attack mode, when we are fully engaged and pressing, we can smother teams and take away not just their shots, but their confidence. We cut their water off. On top of that, this game marks South Carolina's 300th win at Colonial Life Arena. That milestone sat on top of the rivalry win like a crown, reminding everyone that this building is a fortress and has been for a long time. From the emotional way to Clemson, we take a cross-country trip to Los Angeles for one of the most hyped non-conference storylines of the month. South Carolina versus Southern California at Crypto.com Arena. 2 programs with SC on their chest, 2 national brands, 2 rising powers in different ways, and a whole narrative about who gets to call themselves the real SC. This game carried playoff energy. It felt like March in November. By halftime, the scoreboard read 32-30 in favor of South Carolina. The Trojans hit a buzzer beater to keep it tight, and the building was buzzing. You could feel folks out west wondering if this was the night the big bad giant would show cracks against the new Hollywood energy. In the third quarter, South Carolina answered that question with authority. Hell no. We outscored Southern Cal 23-15 in that frame. Joyce Edwards took over key stretches, scoring 7 points in that quarter alone. She got a transition layup that felt like a momentum dagger, then followed it with a smooth floater that capped the critical run. The defense tightened its grip as well. Rotation sharpened. Closeouts had more purpose. Southern Cal's rhythm dipped while ours climbed. By the time we got to the fourth quarter, Gamecocks seized full control. Then we did what we now clearly know this team can do when it smells blood. We locked down. Southern Cal scored just 7 points in the entire fourth quarter. That Clemson energy all over again. Tight game, then a defensive chokehold to close the show. Joyce finished with 17 points and 10 rebounds, her first double-double of the season. It was more than just a stat line, national announcement more like. This is not just a promising young forward. This is a player who's going to go on the road in a story-heavy game and control the outcome on both ends. That 69-52 win in LA over a top 10 opponent was the crown jewel in November. It answered the real SC question in bold font and told the country that this new look version of South Carolina still travels like a heavyweight. After an emotional and narrative heavy road trip to LA, South Carolina came back home for a brief but important homestand against Winthrop and Queens. On paper, these games look like tune-ups. In practice, they were calibration games. Against Winthrop, the goal was not drama. The goal was discovery. Don used that opportunity to stretch the bench. Players like Agat McKeer and Adele Talk saw extended minutes, and we got to see not just whether they could hold leads, but whether they could expand them. In games like that, the staff is watching how players handle responsibility. How do they communicate on defense? Do they understand spacing and timing in the offense? Do they stay locked in even when the scoreboard is? The result was exactly what you'd expect in terms of the final score, but the real win was building trust that our depth is real, not theoretical. Then came Queens. The game ended up being an offensive clinic, especially for the second unit. With the margin widening, Don let the reserves cook, and they responded. Freshman wing Isla McDowell continued to show that blend of length and energy. Crashed the glass, defended multiple positions, ran the floor in transition. Reserve guard Maddie McDaniel turned the game into a showcase of her own value. She averaged around 2.5 assists on the season. But in this matchup, you could really see her feel for control and tempo with the ball in her hands. Organized the offense, found the right people in the right spots, made sure when Raven checked out, the standard for running the show didn't fall off the cliff. By the time the Queens game wrapped, South Carolina set at 6-0. The record said dominant, but the film said something even more important. We were starting to look connected, 1 through 10. That mattered a lot when you were about to step into a spotlight, even like the Players Era Festival in Las Vegas. Now we get to Las Vegas where the lights are brighter, stakes higher, and the games feel like early previews of March. Players Era Festival is not just another early season tournament. It exists at the intersection of competition and the new NIL world, with real money, real visibility, real implications for player branding and program reputation. For South Carolina, this trip became the emotional center for November. The semifinal matchup against Duke was supposed to be a collision of size. Had a historic ACC name on one side and a reigning, reloaded powerhouse of South Carolina on the other. On the court, what we got was a showcase of how terrifying South Carolina's new offense can be when the guards are and bigs are fully in sync. We put 58 points on Duke in the paint. That number tells you everything you need to know. It wasn't just old school back to the basket pounding either. It was a layered attack. Raven Johnson and Taniya Latson used ball screens to slice into the lane over and over again. When Duke tried to help, they dropped the ball off to cutters and bigs. When the defense overcorrected, they found mid-range pockets and floaters. Joyce Edwards caught the ball on short rolls and at the nail. Reading whether to attack, pass, Florida game started tight. Duke trailed by just one after the first quarter, and you could feel them trying to hang on. But then South Carolina detonated. Second quarter saw us drop 26, then third added 21. Every time Duke tried to scratch their way back into it, we responded with another burst. When Duke managed to cut the lead to 8 in the fourth quarter, South Carolina answered with a 14-2 run to slam the door shut. Final numbers told a clear story. We shot around 47% from the field. Duke managed to hit just one three-pointer the entire game. All of their usual safety valves gone. When the horn sounded, South Carolina had not only advanced to the championship, we sent the message. This new version of the Gamecocks still has a ruthless gear. When we decide to punish you in the paint, it can feel like there's no air left in the lane. Then came Texas. This championship felt like an early Final Four game. Texas came in having just beaten UCLA. They were ranked the top 5, big, physical, confident, carrying all the momentum of the event. South Carolina, this was more than a title game. It was a preview of life in the SEC where Texas is a conference rival, not just a non-conference test. For the first time in a long time, South Carolina got beat in the one place we almost always dominate, the glass. Texas won the rebounding battle 39-32. That's not just a number. That's a difference in how possessions end. Texas grabbed 16 offensive rebounds. That's 16 times where South Carolina did the initial job and still had to defend again. When Madina navigating foul trouble and no Ashlyn Watkins, no Chloe Kiss to serve as the safety net and vacuum cleaner on the back line, those extra chances add up. Texas turned those offensive boards into 12 second chance points, and in the 2-point game, that margin matters more than anything. Then there was Rory Harmon. She played all 40 minutes. In the process, she broke the Texas career assist record, which is a huge milestone on its own. But in this particular game, her scoring late is what lingers in the mind. Every time the game tightened, every time the outcome felt like it was teetering, Harmon's decision-making steadied Texas. South Carolina did what champions do. We went down 8 in the third quarter, and instead of folding, clawed back into it. Possession by possession, stop by stop, bucket by bucket. We got the game back level. With just over 15 seconds left, we stepped to the line, knocked down free throws, and tied it at 64-64. We put ourselves in position to steal the whole thing back. Then Texas put the ball exactly where everyone in the building knew it was going, in Harmon's hands. They cleared the side. She dribbled her left, sized up the matchup, and stepped into a mid-range jumper that felt like it hung in the air for an hour. The net barely moved when it dropped, and there was 1 second left on the clock. South Carolina did not even get a clean look on the final inbound. The buzzer sounded, Texas 66, South Carolina 64. First loss of the season, the record now read 7-1. When you step away from the emotion and look at the box score, the story is simple and brutal. We went 1 for 6 from the three-point range, right around 16 to 17%. Without enough perimeter mates to pull Texas defenders out of the paint, they packed it in, loaded up on Joyce and Taniya, and made sure every drive and post touch felt crowded. Combine that with losing the battle on the glass, missing free throws, and you get the recipe for a 2-point loss. It hurt. It should hurt. But it didn't expose South Carolina as a fraud. It showed us exactly where we need to sharpen the blade. This is the difference between a random regular season loss and a crucible moment. A dynasty doesn't get to pretend these games don't matter. A dynasty uses them. Texas walked out of Vegas with the trophy and a bump in the rankings. South Carolina walked out with a blueprint for what has to change if we want to still be the ones cutting down the nets in April. Now let's zoom out and look at the numbers from November, because the stats back up what our eyes are telling us about how good this team already is. Across 8 games, South Carolina scored 716 total points. Our opponents come out for 427. That's a plus 289 point differential in 1 month. On a per game basis, we're sitting at about 89.5 points per game while holding teams to 53.4. That's a plus 36.1 average margin of victory. The dominance is built into the math. We shot 46.5% from the field across that stretch. Opponents shot 35.6% against us. That means that possession after possession, we're getting cleaner looks than the people we playing. From 3, we sat around 37.7% for the month, while opponents hit about 24.2% of their threes. That's a massive swing for past seasons when we sometimes struggle to make people pay from outside. This year's group has more perimeter pop. When the volume is right, we can spread the floor and make it a pick your poison situation. On the glass, we average 45.9 rebounds a night, while opponents average 30.3. That plus 15.6 margin is exactly the kind of dominance we're used to seeing from South Carolina. Again, Texas stands out as the painful exception, not the rule. We also average 16.3 assists per game compared to 11.6 for our opponents. That tells you we're sharing the ball, not just surviving on isolation talent. Our assist-to-turnover ratio sits at 1.3, while our opponents sit at 0.7. We take care of the ball better than the teams we're facing, and we're forcing them into more mistakes. Now, when you break it down player by player, the picture gets even clearer. Joyce Edwards is the offensive focal point, averaging 19.8 points, 6 rebounds, and just over 2 assists per night. She's our leading scorer and the secondary playmaker. Taniya Latson is right behind her, putting up 18.2 points, 4 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. She gives us relentless downhill pressure, and when she's in rhythm, defenses look terrified of her first step. Tessa Johnson sits around 13.7 points with 3.3 rebounds and 3.3 assists. Her ability to space the floor and still contribute as a secondary handler makes her one of the quiet keys to this new offense. When she hits early threes, you see defenses change. In the middle, Madina Okot averages about 13.3 points and 10.8 rebounds, giving us that double-double presence that anchors our interior. She adds about an assist per game and multiplies our second chance opportunities with her work on the glass. Raven Johnson, the engine. She's averaging about 8.8 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 6.8 assists. The scoring number doesn't tell the whole story because her real impact lives in tempo control and decision-making. She dictates how fast we play and who eats on any given night. Off the bench, freshman guard Agatha McKeer is giving us around 7.2 points, 3.8 rebounds, and a little over an assist as an instant offense spark. While wing Isla McDowell adds about 5.7 points and 2.5 rebounds while defending multiple positions and giving us length we badly need on the perimeter. Put it all together, and the statistical profile screams national title contender, not slipping giant. The Texas game doesn't break the model. It just points out very specific places where the model has to be refined. And let's keep in mind that we still haven't talked about Miriam Dowda, Maddie McDaniel, and Adele Tock and what they're going to bring to this rotation once we get going. Now that we walk through the games and the numbers, let's talk about what November really taught us tactically. Offensively, this is not the same script we ran for Leah Boston or Camila Cardoso. We're not starting every possession by dumping the ball into a post player with their back to the basket and waiting to see what happens. This is an inverted offense, and it fits the personnel. Most possessions now begin at the top, with Raven or Taniya handling the ball. We use high ball screens to create movement. When defenses switch, our guards immediately look to exploit mismatches. When defenses try to hedge or trap, the ball finds the roller, usually Joyce or Madina, catching it in his space around the free throw line. From there, bigs are making reads, not just powering through a defender over their shoulder. Joyce might take a dribble and challenge a slower big off the bounce. She might spin, step into a soft jumper, or pivot into a pass to a cutter or to Tessa or Agatha behind the arc. Madina can dive deeper into the paint or kick it back out and flow into a dribble handoff. When this offensive engine is humming, we stretch defenses horizontally and vertically. Opponents have to guard the full width of the court and be ready to scramble through multiple actions. That's what we saw against Duke when our guards repeatedly got into the lane and our bigs finished everything. This style of play leads into the fact that we now have multiple creators on the perimeter and a forward in Joyce who can be just as dangerous with the ball away from the block as she is on it. It's the perfect expression of the third act. Defensively, November also exposed the pain points. The biggest one is containment of elite penetrating guards. Rory Harmon turned the Texas game into a masterclass in how a high-level point guard can challenge a defense that no longer has a freakish vertical eraser behind it. She used ball screens to get downhill, forced bigs into uncomfortable switches, and made South Carolina's help defense make hard choices. Without Ashlyn waiting at the back of the play to volley shots into the third row, those mistakes become fouls, layups, or scramble situations. And when the defense scrambles, it's much harder to find box-out assignments. That's where second-chance points start stacking up, and that's exactly what happened against Texas. The second vulnerability is tied to that, defensive rebounding against front courts to match our size and physicality. The overall numbers say we are one of the best rebounding teams in the country, and that's the truth. But against Texas, when they matched our length and energy, our motor on the glass, and when Madina dealt with foul trouble, our rebounding identity cracked. The fixes are clear. Our guards have to get sharper at navigating screens and containing the ball above the free throw line so our bigs aren't constantly in panic rotations. Our help defense has to be more disciplined about coming early without overcommitting. In 1 through 5, every player has to treat defensive rebounds as a shared mission, not just a big assignment. The good thing about what November showed us is this. The issues are tactical and technical, not cultural. The team cares. The effort is there. The problems live in positioning, timing, and reps, which are all fixable over the course of a season. Now let's step back from Columbia and Vegas and look at the national picture. When the AP Top 25 dropped after the Players Era Festival, UConn was still the unanimous number 1 spot on the strength of a 104-39 demolition of Xavier and an undefeated start as defending champs. Texas jumped to number 2 after stacking wins over UCLA and South Carolina on back-to-back days. In South Carolina, we slid to number 3. On the surface, that movement makes sense. Polls react to results. You beat 2 top-tier teams on a neutral floor, you move up. You take your first loss, you slide. That's the rhythm of these rankings. But the story that matters long-term is not just the number next to the logo in December. It's what this new landscape looks like with Texas now inside the SEC. For years, the SEC conversation in women's hoops started with South Carolina and then worked its way outward. Yes, there have been challengers and good teams, but the standard, the bully, the measure stick, however you want to phrase it, it's been us, South Carolina. Texas being in the SEC with this kind of roster and this kind of early statement got people thinking that this changes the climate. Now we aren't just looking at one premier showdown in Vegas and then maybe a rematch deep in the tournament. We are looking at a conference where we will see them again in league play in the SEC tournament and possibly even again on a neutral March or April stage. That's not a one-time storm. That's a weather pattern. And on top of Texas, we still have UConn looming with that international picture. Plus all the other programs trying to punch into that top tier. The sport is healthier and more competitive than ever at the top. For South Carolina, that means something simple. Business as usual. We don't coast to history anyway. That's not our standard. The rings and banners are not going to box out Texas on the glass or defend after the timeout plays against UConn. What they do give us is a proof of concept. We've been here before. We know what it takes. So, yeah, let Texas enjoy that bump to number 2. Let UConn remain at number 1. The real question isn't whose logo lives at the top of the December poll. The real question is, who are you betting on when it's time to roll the ball out on a neutral floor with the national trophy on the line? If you're looking at a program with multiple national titles, a coach like Staley, a rising superstar in Joyce Edwards, and a loaded backcourt with Latson and Raven, you're not exactly feeling like a third-place program. You're feeling like a contender that just got much-needed wake-up call in November. So what do we do with all of this as we walk out of November and into December and beyond? We move forward knowing exactly who we are and exactly what still needs work. We leave November with a star in Joyce Edwards, who looks like a National Player of the Year candidate and the centerpiece of this third act. We leave with Taniya Latson, a proven scoring weapon who's clearly embracing the challenge of blending her gifts into a system built around shared greatness instead of solo heroic. We leave with Taniya Latson, a proven scoring weapon who's clearly embracing the challenge of blending her gifts into a system built around shared greatness instead of solo heroics. We leave with Madina Okot, firmly established as our interior anchor, a double-double machine whose presence has already saved us in a lot of moments. We leave with Raven Johnson, a point guard whose impact goes beyond points, controlling pace, tone, and poise. We also leave November with young pieces like Agat McCure and Alan McDowell, who showed they can contribute right now and will only become more important as the season stretches. Depth is not a theory with this group, it's a reality. At the same time, we carry the lessons. We know that without Ashlyn and Chloe's safety nets, we cannot afford even small lapses in defensive rebounding against elite front courts. We know that our perimeter shooting volume and confidence have to scale up in big games, so nobody gets to clog the paint with no consequence. We know that if we see another guard like Roy Harmon, we have to be sharper at the point of attack and more connected in our pick and roll coverage. We also know that the schedule's not letting up. There's a matchup with Louisville waiting. There's an SEC grind that now includes Texas with a whole lot of swagger. There are other teams in this league and in the national picture that would love nothing more than to be known as the squad that finally nudged South Carolina off the pedestal. The difference between a cute run and a true dynasty is the response. Anyone can look invincible when things are going perfectly. True dynasties show who they are after they get punched in the mouth. South Carolina got punched in Vegas. We bled, we lost, we dropped in the rankings. We ain't break. The real story of 25-26 is not that we lost to Texas in November. The real story is what we do with that loss as we move towards March and April. Do we clean the glass up? Do we level up the three-point volume? Do we sharpen our guard containment? Do we turn that two-point heartbreak into the reason we are 2 steps better version of ourselves when it's time to cut nets? If you know the Staley, if you know this program, if you know this fan base, you already know how we answer that. We don't run from the Crucible. We walk straight back into it with the adjustments, with confidence, and with the same expectation we always have. We playing for chips. Before we get out of here, let's talk about the energy, because this part ain't on the stat sheet. This is Gamecocks versus everybody. Every time we lose one game, folks crawl out the woodwork like, is the dynasty over? Is South Carolina slipping? Is this the end of the run? And every single time, it's the same story. They talk crazy. They move us down a spot or two in some poll, and they start hyping up whoever just got a win like they solved the sport. We heard it before. We heard it when Aaliyah left. We heard it when people said you can't rebuild a front court like we had with Camilla. We heard it when players transferred, when NIL shifted the landscape, when the SEC got tougher, when the national media decided they was tired of the same team eating, and every time we stayed right here. Until Us is not just a cute slogan for a t-shirt, it's the timeline. It's the standard. It's a reminder that the era of women's college basketball we live in right now can't be told without South Carolina at the center. You want to talk about super teams, portal moves, NIL, Vegas tournaments, crypto arenas, super conferences, expansion, all of that. Cool. Every one of those conversations runs into South Carolina at some point. So, yeah, keep doubting us. Keep moving us to number 3. Keep talking about who's leapfrog South Carolina in December. Keep doing the little has the gap closed segments. That's fine. That's the fuel. Because on this side, we're not panicking. We adjusting. We in the gym. We watching the Texas film. We boxing out at practice like it's fourth quarter in Vegas. We repping threes and game speed sets. We're sharpening pick and roll coverages so the next Rory Harmon that pulls up on our schedule don't get to live that comfortably. Gamecocks versus everybody means we'll take your boos, your tweets, your think pieces, and your hot takes, and we'll stack them next to the trophies we already got while we chase the next ones. Until us means you can juggle all the trends, all the NIL money, all the transfers, all the narratives, but the story of this era still hits different when the team ain't guarding the black walk in the gym. So go ahead, keep doubting us. We see it, we hear it, and we gonna make y'all live with whatever version of us show up in March and April after all of this South Carolina might be vulnerable now energy y'all been putting in the air. Gamecocks versus everybody. Until us. Keep doubting us. We good with that. Fam, November was a crucible. The crown got heavy. The schedule got real. The country got a crystal clear look at what South Carolina's third act is going to be about. We watched the real SC plant the flag in LA. We watched this team turn Duke into a paint clinic in Vegas. We watched Texas expose cracks we can't ignore. And now we stand in this moment where the polls say one thing, but the story is still being written by us. Make sure you drop a comment with your thoughts on this November run. What worried you? And who your early MVP is between Joyce, Taniya, Madina, and Raven. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and share this video with somebody who loves the game and respects the grind of a dynasty. Catch y'all next time on Cess Talk Sports, where we always bring you the latest on the rising stars and legends in the making. Cocks up, we hard, keep hooping, stay tuned, talk soon. I'm out.